The story of the Headhunter. A family of 4, 2 young children and their parents, were traveling on the road when their car broke down. The parents went out to look for help and left the radio open for the children in case they got bored. By nightfall, the parents still hadn't returned. As they sat in the darkness, the children continued to listen to the radio and grew alarmed when they heard that a dangerous killer was on the loose, having escaped from a prison nearby. The newsreader warned listeners to take extreme care when going about their business. Time passed, and the children waited. The silence outside the car was absolute until they suddenly heard knocking on the roof of the car above them. The blows became louder and faster, and the children could not afford any more. They opened the car doors and fled in horror. Only the eldest dared to turn to see the source of their fear. On top of the car was a large man who was bouncing 2 objects, the heads of the children's parents. The madman under the bed. This is the story of a little girl named Sarah. As a child, Sarah was afraid of the dark and got a dog to keep her company. After that, she slept peacefully, knowing that the dog was under her bed. If she was afraid, she just had to stretch out her hand, and her dog would start licking her until she fell asleep. Years passed like this, and Sarah grew up, and the dog grew old and became old. And one night she heard on the radio that he thought a dangerous killer was near the house where she lived with her dog next to her. Sarah was not afraid. She went to bed, stretched out her hand, and the dog began to lick her as usual. She slept quietly, and when she woke up, she was surprised that the dog was still licking. I looked under the bed and screamed. The dog was dead, and the tongue that was tirelessly licking it belonged to a man. The Graveyard Challenge. Several teenage girls went for a sleepover at a friend's house, taking advantage of the fact that the parents were away. When they turned out the lights, they started talking about an old man who had just been buried in a nearby cemetery. It was said that he had been buried alive and could be heard scratching at the coffin, trying to get out. One of the girls scoffed at the idea, so the others dared her to go visit the grave right there and then. As proof that she had actually gone, she was to drive a wooden stake into the earth of the grave. The girl left, and her friends lay waiting for her to return. But hours passed, and their friend did not materialize. They were awake and increasingly terrified. The morning has come, and the girl has not yet appeared. Therefore, when the parents returned, they all went down to the cemetery. They discovered the girl on the grave, dead. When she bent down to push the peg into the floor, she grabbed the hem of her skirt. She was struggling to get up. She thought the buried man had caught her. The result is that she died of fear. Have you been up to check the kids? A teenage girl was asked to take care of a family living in a huge and luxurious house. This was her first evening at work, and after she put the kids to bed upstairs, she sat in front of the TV. But as soon as I settled there, the phone rang. The caller was a man. He asked while panting and laughing threateningly. The girl ended the call convinced that her friends were joking with her. But the man called her again and asked her again, "Did you check the children?" Again. She hung up and is scared now. But the man called a third time and said, "This time I took care of the children. Now I am coming for you." By now, the babysitter was truly terrified. She called the police and reported the calls. The police told her to try to distract the man the next time he called to give them time to trace the call. As expected, the guy called back. The babysitter begged him to leave her alone, thus keeping him on the line longer. At the end, "Hang up." Immediately, the phone rang again. This time, the police said, "Leave the house quickly. The calls come from the top floor." The Bony Hand. A 7-year-old girl was left with her grandmother in her small apartment while her parents went to the movies. Grandmother and granddaughter had dinner together and chatted for a while. At 10 o'clock, the grandmother picked up her sewing, and the little girl turned on the TV. They were sitting companionably together when the grandmother got a terrible thirst and asked her granddaughter to bring her a glass of water. The girl said it was too dark. The grandmother said to the girl, "Don't be afraid, there is a key next to the bathroom door." The girl got up and felt her way along the wall of the corridor, groping for the switch. As she reached the bathroom, she stopped and felt around, only to come into contact with a bony hand that tried to drag her into the bathroom. The girl managed to pull away and run, screaming and crying, back to her grandmother. After the incident, the girl needed psychological treatment. What happened has never been established, though no one but the grandmother and the girl were in the apartment at the time.